Many people have wondered, why do video games and the violence in video games cause many people of many different ages to cause violence themselves? Most people have always wondered, do video games actually cause one's own violence, or is it just a part of one's own nature? Many people have always discussed and attributed to a sense of one playing a video game of violent nature such as Grand Theft Auto or Call of Duty and have accepted it as being a part of their violence. None have always tested it in a correct manner. There have been tests, but there haven't been enough tests to determine if video game violence does cause violence within youth. And so, what I have decided to talk about today is I have decided to talk about why video games do not cause violence in youth, because of the fact of three main points. One is the fact of video games are meant to relieve one of stress and anger, and it's also another form of rough and tumble play. Another form, another point is that there have been no clear connections between video game violence and youth violence in the world. And then also, for my third and final point, is that competitive natures of video game playing is what actually causes aggression and not directly the act of playing a violent video game. So, for the sake of my first argument, I like to point out that stress and anger, which in most people of the psychology world would call catharsis, they would usually say that video game violence does not connect to youth violence. I know of this because I've also studied video games, and I am also a psychology major, so I am put into that area where I must study video games and violence and how they connect with one another. And I have read many books, and I have talked to many professors and those who are well versed in the topic, and they have always told me that there is no true connection between video game violence and youth violence. With catharsis, which is pretty much anger, um, catharsis is mainly a point of saying they are frustrated and they're feeling a sense of anger. And what video games allow them to do is it allows them to let that anger out and let it flow. And so, a journal from Cheryl Olson and others has always indicated that those who use video games for the sense of relieving their catharsis have led better lives, and that also video games are a form of rough and tumble play, and it allows them to get their anger out in much more um, peaceful ways without causing um, physical violence to others. Um, in relation to of the no clear connection between video game violence and youth violence, many people, along with Christopher Ferguson and his colleagues in their articles, they have noted that as many times um, as video games have been tested in relation to violence between youth and all people of all different ages, there has never been a true standard that has been tested upon. Many other countries, including Asia, not Asia, yes, Asia and Europe, have tested it on different levels, but never on the same standard. And sometimes those standards have been very flawed. So mainly all of these tests have been flawed to the point where the information can't be accepted as a common ground law. The data has been shown, but none of it has been truly accepted among those in their peers. With with the connection of video games and youth violence, it's been tested on multiple occasions by numerous people and numerous um, doctoral students, professors, and others, including in the sense of law, but it has never been proven and it's never been truly connected because there's never been one solid model that they all follow. Most of their data has been flawed, and there's been because of that flaw, all the data that they have in turn found has never been connected. And then for the final argument that I would like to propose is that playing video games in themselves create a competitive nature. When you play a game such as Grand Theft Auto or just multiplayer games such as Call of Duty or Battlefield or things that do have violence in them, it's not necessarily the fact that the game is violent in itself. It's the fact of the game stimulates competitiveness among one another. When you play with a friend, an example being if you're playing the game of Call of Duty and you seem to be losing, your competitiveness drives you to become um, more aggressive, and that aggressiveness leads to the sense of anger and violence. But the game itself isn't doing that. It's your self motivation and it's your competitiveness to win that is causing this problem of I'm becoming angry and I want to lash out. It's not necessarily the fact of the game itself. If it was always the game, then it would be noted by other professors and relaying back into my previous argument that there would be a direct connection between the two. However, there isn't, and there's also the fact of non-violent video games as well have been shown to cause the same kind of competitiveness. With relation to the competitiveness itself, is the fact of people have become angry over things such as losing, and some people are sore losers. And when you go over the fact of over and over again, it's not necessarily the game, it's more of yourself being intrinsically motivated to win, so your competitiveness drives you. And when your competitiveness keeps going and going and going, you sense you develop a sense of anger and um, a sense of fuel to your fire, and that's what makes this anger come forth. And going back and relating all these arguments together, it's more about the fact of video games themselves do not cause the violence. It is the person themselves. Another part of information that people don't necessarily connect to is the fact of people don't think of one's own past or one's own life when they think of video game violence. When they think of video game violence, they think of, oh, it's only the video game. No, you have to include the person themselves, their history, and and what is currently going on with them at that very moment. If you don't include those things in a contemporary model of sorts, then you're only creating the issue that video games um you're creating the stigma that video games do cause youth violence, whereas they do not. And you can also relate this to other ages as well when you're going into youth, young adults, and adults, because many people of many different ages play video games, and you must take into account that there are many different people that play video games and many different people with many different backgrounds. So, with that, I conclude the end of my speech.